I was going to propose to her. The ring was in my jacket pocket. But that night, I saw her kissing my boss. It hit me so fast, so brutal, I could barely breathe. I walked in carrying lemon grilled salmon, her favorite. The building was quiet, and my heart was full of hope. I thought, when I opened that door, I'd see her smile, her eyes lighting up with surprise. I imagined her running into my arms, while I slipped the ring from my pocket and gave her a promise. But reality doesn't play out the way it does in your head. Through the crack of the half-closed door, I saw her leaning on his shoulder. And then, a kiss. Not casual, not friendly, but rushed, hungry, full of desire. The woman who swore she'd walk through life with me was giving herself to another man, right in front of me. I froze. The box slipped from my hands, crashed on the cold tile floor. The salmon rolled out, the lemon scent mixing with the metallic air of the midnight hallway. That sound, it felt like the death knell of my marriage. I didn't storm in. I didn't yell. I didn't fight. I just stood there, clutching the ring inside my pocket. That piece of cold metal suddenly weighed 1,000 pounds. And in that silence, I realized the real pain wasn't seeing her kiss him. It was realizing how much I had trusted her. I believed that if I just loved enough, sacrificed enough, our family would stay strong. But in one moment, that belief shattered, like the food spilled across the floor. That night, I knew. It wasn't just dinner that got abandoned. It was my heart, too. My name is James, 35. A carpenter nobody really knows. But I once believed these calloused hands were strong enough to build an entire life. I met her during my hardest days. Back then, I was renting a small workshop, the saw rattling, dust hanging in the air. She asked me to make a little dining table. When she first saw it finished, she smiled, ran her hand over the wood, and said, "You built this with your heart, didn't you?" That one line went straight into me. And from that day, I believed I'd found the one woman who truly understood me. We started out in a cramped apartment, a second-hand sofa, an old TV that barely got reception. Sometimes, when I cracked open a Bud Light, she'd wrinkle her nose at the smell, then laugh. "As long as you don't spill it on the carpet, we're fine." On winter nights, we'd curl up under a blanket, watching football, snow falling heavy outside, and inside, just a fragile warmth. In those moments, I thought to myself, this is happiness, simple, complete. A few years later, I bought us a house in the suburbs. The mortgage took nearly everything I made, but she held my hand, reassuring me, "Don't worry, as long as we have each other, we'll get through anything." And I believed her, completely. I thought love was enough, that someday, all struggles would just turn into memories. I loved her in my own way. No flowers, no letters, no fancy words. I loved through little things. Fixing the door that stuck, changing the oil in her car, cooking dinner when she was too tired. I thought she understood. I thought those small things were enough to keep her heart. But somewhere along the way, cracks began to show. I worked late, came home smelling of wood and paint. Once, she sighed, "Sometimes I think you love that workshop more than me." I laughed it off, thinking she was joking. But looking back now, maybe that was the first warning sign. And I ignored it. I didn't know then that every dollar I put into the bank, saving for our mortgage, would one day stand as proof of her betrayal. There was one winter night. The power went out. The whole neighborhood sank into darkness. We sat by candlelight at the dining table, wrapped in a heavy blanket. She leaned her head on my shoulder and whispered, "I know you'll always protect me." I held her tight, convinced that nothing could ever break that trust. But now, looking back, I see how naive I was. I thought I was building a family. But the truth is, I was only building an empty house. Later, our dinners grew quieter, the silence heavier than any argument. I chose silence, thinking it would keep the peace. But silence only pushed us further apart. And then one late night, I walked into the room. She quickly flipped her phone face down on the table, the screen still glowing from a new message. I just smiled, pretended not to notice, and went straight into the bathroom. I didn't know. That was my last chance. The last moment I could have asked, faced it, maybe saved us. But I let it pass. And after that, everything began to spiral. That night, after she flipped her phone face down, I told myself, maybe it's just a friend texting. Maybe I'm overthinking. I showered quickly, lay down beside her, but I couldn't sleep. Her back turned to me. the light of her phone flashing on, then off again, in an instant. I could hear my own heartbeat, heavy, like a hammer striking. The next morning, when she left for work, I noticed her jacket on the chair. In the pocket, a receipt. Dinner for two. The exact time she had texted me, saying she was working late. I froze. The paper trembled in my hand. Cold, printed words. But to me, it felt like a blade cutting deep into my chest. I didn't want to believe it. I told myself, maybe she was with coworkers. That it was nothing. I'd heard enough stories about jealous men. Men who lost themselves in blind suspicion. I didn't want to be one of them. But as I went to throw the receipt away, my eyes stopped. On one detail. The wine. The exact kind she once said. She only drank with someone special. My chest tightened. That night, I asked her, gently, "Late shift yesterday?" She nodded, eyes avoiding mine. Yeah, after the meeting, the team grabbed dinner. I was too tired to text. It sounded believable, but what haunted me was her hand. Clutching her bag so hard her knuckles turned white. She'd never done that. Not for a simple lie. I stayed silent. I thought silence would make her feel guilty. Make her confess. But no, silence only widened the gap. In the days after, I started noticing more. She took her phone into the bathroom, locked the door, and when she came out, her eyes, shimmering, not tired, but glowing, like someone living in another world. A secret world. One night, as I reached for water, I heard a whisper through the door. Her voice, soft, shaking. "I miss you." But not for me. I froze in the hallway, swallowed by the dark. It felt like I'd been shut out of my own house. I didn't dare open the door. Didn't dare confront her. I just stood there, like a stranger eavesdropping on someone else's life. When she finally stepped out and saw me, she flinched. Then quickly smiled. "You're still up?" I forced a crooked smile. "Yeah, just thirsty." In that moment, I knew the truth was closing in. But I still clung to my lie. Maybe it's just a misunderstanding. Maybe it's just a friend. I didn't realize. My hesitation that night was the first step toward a long road of cracks that would never heal. Later that evening, I sat at the table, a half-open beer can in my hand. Couldn't even drink. She walked out of the bathroom, hair damp, wrapped in steam. I almost asked, "Do you have something to tell me?" But when she turned, her eyes calm, steady. So steady, it strangled my words. The question stuck in my throat. I only shook my head, pretending I never meant to speak. She placed her wedding ring on the table. "It gets in the way at work." Then walked into the bedroom. I just stared at the ring, rolling once, then lying still. In that moment, it looked exactly like our marriage. Once shining, now just a cold circle, abandoned on a wooden table. I thought about the empty jewelry box I had found days earlier. A hollow box, a lonely ring, and a wife drifting further away. The pieces fit together, and the picture was clear. I was no longer the center of her world. I wanted to scream, to slam the table, to force the truth out of her. But instead, I chose silence. And that silence, I would later realize, was the one-way ticket to the end of my marriage. That night, I sat in my car, hands gripping the steering wheel. I watched her walk out, with him. For a moment, I opened the door. My hand on the handle. One push, and I could have faced it. But my fingers shook, sweat dripping. And then, I let go. The door shut, and I just sat there, helpless, watching them leave, like a pitiful spectator in my own life. When I got home, I found an email in the trash. Dinner reservation at the Crown. Not just any place, but the restaurant where we celebrated our 3rd anniversary. I remembered her raising her glass that night, smiling at me, whispering, "You're the best decision I ever made." That memory, once a warm flame, was now a blade, twisting in my chest. I stared at the wedding ring on the table, the streetlight hitting it, making it glimmer, cruelly. An empty box, a stained restaurant, a broken vow, all closing in on me. And the next morning, I made my decision. I would follow her. I didn't know then what I was about to see would cut deeper than anything before. The next morning, I decided to follow her. My heart pounded as I watched her turn into a downtown hotel. Instead of the office, the sign glowed bright, like a verdict, like the truth laid bare. She stepped out. Beside him, the man I once respected as her boss. They walked in together, and the smile on her face, a smile I hadn't seen in so long. I sat in my car for hours, eyes locked on that hotel door. 100 questions screaming in my head. Why? Why not just tell me? Why choose betrayal? But the more I asked, the emptier I felt. When they finally walked out, I almost opened the door, almost faced it all. My hand gripped the handle, trembling. And then, I let go. I just sat there, a coward, watching my happiness rip apart. That night, when she came home, she smiled faintly. Long meeting, you should have gone to bed. I only nodded, then turned on the saw in the garage. The blade shrieked, drowning out the pain I couldn't speak. And in that moment, it hit me. Maybe what kills a marriage isn't just betrayal. It's the thousands of silences that follow. The days after, I tried to hold on. I cooked dinner, set the table, like the early days. But she only picked at her food, excused herself, busy with work. The wooden table I had built with my own hands, once filled with laughter, now only the cold clatter of silverware. I suggested softly, maybe this weekend, just the two of us, like before. She hesitated, then shook her head. I'm busy. Her eyes didn't meet mine, and in that moment, I saw it. I was becoming just a shadow in her life. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked through the house. The wedding photo on the wall, the heart-shaped mugs, the shoes she wore on our first trip, everything still there, but stripped of meaning. I touched the wedding photo. It felt like touching a stranger. One last attempt. I placed my ring on the table. If something's wrong, tell me. I can take it. As long as it's from you. Her lips trembled. She picked up the ring, slipped it back on. You're overthinking. The denial didn't soothe me. It was a bandage over a wound that wouldn't stop bleeding. One evening, I came home early. The house was dark. She answered my call. Still at the office. But as I drove past the hotel, her car was parked right outside. I pulled over, my chest burning. I thought about taking a picture. Proof. But I put the phone down. I didn't need it. The truth was already clear. I drove home, opened a beer, sat at the wooden table, the chair beside me, empty. And I realized, the cruelest loneliness isn't being alone. It's sitting next to someone, and feeling empty anyway. The next day, I tried again. A special dinner. Lemon grilled salmon, her favorite. I even bought flowers, placed them in the center of the table. When she walked in, her eyes froze for a second. I hoped, for just a flicker, that she would remember. But minutes later, her phone buzzed. Her eyes lit up, in a way I hadn't seen in years. She picked it up, stepped onto the balcony, and left me sitting there. I ate alone. The salmon tasted like ash, the flowers scentless. I remembered the first time I made that dish. She had smiled and said, "You're exactly the man I've been looking for." Now, that memory echoed back, like a cruel joke. I stopped pretending. I watched. I collected the pieces, every hidden text, every late night, each one another nail in the coffin of our marriage. One night, while she slept, her phone lit up. A message on the screen. It's almost time. Soon, you and I won't have to hide. I read it again, and again, each word burning into my eyes. I set the phone down, looked at her sleeping face, the woman who once swore, no matter how hard it gets, I'll stay by you, was dreaming of a life without me. And I whispered to myself, the pain isn't in the betrayal. The pain is that I still love her. The next morning, I walked into the garage, my eyes on the dust-covered car. And one thought rang clear in my head. Enough, this has to end. I opened the cabinet, took out a small notebook. Inside, every note, every detail I had kept in silence. Tonight, she had plans. And this time, I would follow. No more silence. No more turning away. I would face it, whatever the outcome. I had to know. That night, I followed her. The city was lit up. My heart hammered like a war drum. Her car turned into the familiar parking lot. Not the office. The hotel sign flashed against my windshield, blinding like a verdict. She stepped out. Not alone. He walked beside her, his hand resting lightly on her back. What broke me most? She was wearing the blue dress I'd given her. The dress she once whispered would make her the most beautiful. Now it was not for me. I killed the engine, opened the door. Each step felt like walking on shattered glass. When I entered the lobby, she turned. Our eyes met. Her smile died, replaced by stunned silence. I didn't raise my voice. No scene, no chaos. I looked at her and said in a low, hoarse tone, I didn't come to start trouble. I want the truth. From you, only you. Time seemed to stop. She trembled. He tried to step forward. I cut him off. I'm not talking to you. I'm asking my wife. Silence. 1 second, 2 seconds. Felt like a century. Then her voice broke. I'm sorry. I've fallen in love with him. Just 4 words. They tore my world apart. I remembered a rainy night years ago. Her sitting next to me in the garage, smiling. With you, I'm never afraid. That memory collided with the present. She's standing with another man. Her eyes no longer mine. I asked, my voice choking, what does he have that I don't? She bit her lip. No answer. That silence cut deeper than any insult. I drew a breath. Tried to stay standing, though my knees wanted to crumble. My voice came out raw. If this is your choice, I won't hold you. But remember, you just killed someone who trusted you more than himself. She cried, tears streaming down her face. I had no strength left to hold her. He embraced her, as if to claim that place now belonged to him. I turned away, my steps heavy. Yet somehow I felt lighter. Truth, however brutal, was easier than not knowing. Outside, rain fell cold and hard. I tilted my face up, letting the drops hit me. Couldn't tell which were rain and which were tears. At home, I took off my wedding ring, placed it next to hers on the table. 2 metal circles, lying side by side. Like us, once together, now parallel, never to meet again. I opened the small notebook, wrote with shaking hands. Love doesn't die from betrayal. It dies from silence. Today, I choose to end that silence. I closed the book, looked at the dark room, and a clear thought echoed in me. Tomorrow, I will face everything. Not only her, but myself. And the price will not be small. The next morning, sunlight spilled through the window, but it carried no warmth. The bed beside me was cold. She had left early. Down in the kitchen, the 2 wedding rings still lay on the wooden table, silent, like mute witnesses to a marriage already dead. I went to work, trying to act normal, but every keystroke on the keyboard sounded like nails being driven into a coffin. At lunch, I sat alone in the cafeteria. Through the window, I saw a man holding his wife's hand, their child skipping along beside them. I swallowed hard. That image had once been me. Now, I was only an outsider. That night, for the first time since the hotel, we sat across from each other. My voice steady but heavy. I won't beg anymore. But we need to talk. What do you want? I need to know so I can prepare. She lowered her eyes. Her voice trembled. I want a divorce. Not unexpected. But when spoken out loud, it cut clean. Like an axe falling. I stayed silent. My heart shattered. But inside that wreckage was a strange new space. A space for truth. News spread quickly. My mother came, wrapped her arms around me, her tears soaking my shoulder. Son, I know you tried your best. For the first time in months, I cried. I buried my head into her shoulder, sobbing like a child. I used to think men shouldn't cry. But in that moment, I learned tears aren't weakness. They are release. My father sat quietly in the corner, eyes red, voice steady. A man has to accept loss sometimes, to find himself again. Don't let this pain turn you bitter. His words carved deep into me, a lesson that felt timeless. Friends dragged me out for beer. They clapped my back, cursed his name, asked if I wanted to deal with him. I shook my head. I don't need revenge. If anyone's to blame, it's me, for staying silent too long. The table went quiet. No more rowdy laughter. They understood. Some battles aren't fought with fists, only with the heart. That night, I opened an old photo box. There she was, smiling beside me, holding up a concert ticket from our first date. I touched the photo, my hand trembling. Those eyes had once been my whole world. Now, they belonged to someone else. The days waiting for divorce papers felt like a haze. The house turned hollow. I opened the closet, half of it empty, her perfume fading, replaced by the smell of dust. Some nights, I sat alone in the garage, staring at the wooden table I had built. I remembered that night when the power went out. We sat by candlelight. She rested her head on my shoulder, whispering, I trust you'll always protect me. I let out a bitter laugh. I tried to protect her, but I couldn't protect her heart. One night, I broke. I cried out loud, the sound echoing through the empty house, like digging up all the pain I had buried. I collapsed to the floor, hands clutching my chest, gasping. It was the first time I allowed myself to fall apart, and the first time I let go of a heavy piece of my heart. After that cry, I realized pain didn't kill me. Silence did. And I chose. I would not be silent anymore. On the day of the trial, I sat across from her. The white courtroom felt frozen. Everyone else faded. The judge asked, "Do you have anything to say?" I stayed quiet for a long time, my eyes fixed on her, memories flooding back. Her smile at our wedding, the dinner by candlelight, the promise, as long as we're together. I took a deep breath, my voice firm. I won't hold her back. I only hope she finds happiness, even if it's not with me. Tears blurred my vision, but they weren't weak tears. They were tears of release. When I walked out of the courthouse, the sun was gentle. I slipped the ring into my pocket. It wasn't a burden anymore. I lifted my head, and for the first time, in the rush of strangers, I felt free. That night, I opened the notebook, wrote the final page. She left. And I left too. I lost a woman. But I found a man. Myself. I closed the book, set the pen down. Inside me, a door opened. Beyond it, darkness. But I knew, as long as I keep walking, light will be waiting. The first days after the divorce, the house became an echoing void. Every object whispered her name. A teacup with faint stains. A book left unfinished on the sofa. A pair of slippers, crooked on the floor. At first, the emptiness felt like a pit, swallowing me whole. One night, I picked up my phone, opened our old messages. My fingers typed, "Are you okay?" The blue light glowed in the dark, waiting. I stared at those words for a long time, then deleted them. I knew I didn't need her answer anymore. What I needed was to learn how to keep moving, not turn back. I started relearning how to live alone. Simple breakfasts, a book instead of the noisy TV. At night, I went back to the garage, sawing, sanding, fitting pieces together. The sound of wood cutting no longer hid my pain. It became a rhythm, like a heartbeat. Every stroke of the saw was a breath, bringing me back to myself. I realized loneliness isn't as terrifying as I thought. What's terrifying is running from it. When I dared to sit in the silence, the darkness no longer consumed me. I began to run. The lakeside path where we once walked together. Now just me and my breath. At first, every step felt heavy, like carrying mountains. But day by day, my lungs grew lighter, my stride steadier. I bought a new notebook. On the first page, I wrote, "This is not for pain. This is for what I still have." And I began to write. I cooked eggs better today. I reread an old book and felt calm. I smiled at a familiar song. Friends noticed the change. One day, a buddy slapped my shoulder, laughing. "You look like yourself again." My eyes burned. Turns out, I hadn't lost everything. I had only lost myself for a while. And now, I was finding my way back. At a divorce support group, I heard a man share. I thought losing my wife meant losing it all. But I realized I still had my kids, my work, and myself. I sat quietly, then smiled. The pain wasn't just my wound anymore. It was a thread connecting all of us who had broken. And because of that, I didn't feel alone. One weekend, I returned to the old cafe, the place where I once waited for her each night. Now it was just me, and a black coffee. I opened my notebook and wrote, "Some people come to walk a stretch with us. Some leave to teach us how to stand alone. And sometimes, it's loss that teaches us how to truly love." Sunlight streamed through the window, casting my shadow across the wooden table. I looked up at the street. Couples holding hands, elderly walking slowly together. Instead of pain, I smiled. I wasn't jealous anymore. I only wished them to keep what I had lost. On the way home, sudden rain poured down, but I didn't run for cover. I kept walking, letting the water wash over me, rinsing the dust inside my heart. When the rain stopped, the sun broke through, golden light spilling over the wet street. I stood still, took a deep breath. That night, I closed my notebook, wrote the final line. I once feared losing her, but the greatest fear was losing myself. And now I found me again. I set the pen down, closed my eyes, and in the dark, I whispered, "Thank you for coming. Thank you for leaving." For the first time, I slept through the night. No dreams of the past. And in that sleep, I knew tomorrow's sunrise wouldn't just be light outside, but light within me.